She sat at the dinner table, her plate untouched. Then her mom looked her dead in the eye and said, "You're useless. Your brother sends $15,000 a month. What do you do?" This is the story of Isabelle, an overlooked daughter disowned by her parents for not being profitable enough. But what they didn't know was she was already building something that would change everything. Would you forgive a family who only values your worth in dollars? Drop your thoughts in the comments. They say you can't choose your family. But I wonder if I had a choice, would I still sit at that dinner table? The air inside the house smelled of rosemary and expectation. I hadn't walked through that front door in nearly 2 years, but the hallway still echoed with the same cold footsteps and curated silence. Everything looked picture perfect, just like the holiday postcards Mother sent out, polished floors. Ivory candles burning unscented on the mantel, and a long mahogany table set for 7. My heels clicked softly on the marble as I followed the sound of forced laughter. Thanksgiving weekend, family time, gratitude and all that. I should have known better. Isabelle Mother's voice was syrupy sweet, like she was hosting a gala. She didn't rise from her seat, just tilted her head and gestured at the empty chair beside Aunt Rachel. Finally, I was starting to think your flight got delayed again. I gave a polite nod, brushing the rain from my coat. Nice to see you too, Mom. Across the table, Ethan raised his glass. To family, he said smoothly, smiling like he was about to be photographed. Everyone clinked their glasses. I took a sip of sparkling water and forced a smile. Seattle treating you well? Aunt Rachel asked, her voice low, maybe trying to sound casual. She was always the quiet observer, never fully part of the judgment machine this family ran on. It's good, I replied. Busy. Work's been picking up. Still with that accounting firm? Still, I said, omitting the real answer. Ethan leaned back in his chair, the picture of relaxed success in his tailored navy blazer. I've been telling Mom and Dad we should all invest in Seattle real estate. That market's booming. Father grunted in agreement. Ethan knows how to move money. He's been so generous. Mother chimed in. $15,000 every month. Always thinking of us. She reached over and touched his arm like he'd donated a kidney. I smiled tightly, chewing a bite of turkey that tasted like cotton. Isabelle Father said, fork pausing midair. You send anything this month, I swallowed. 2,000. The silence lasted just long enough for me to feel it settle in my chest. 2. Mother laughed, a short, sharp sound. Still paying off those student loans? Yes. She set her wine glass down. It's a shame. Ethan went to college too. And look at him now. I'm doing okay. You're 30, she said. And still so, average. Across the table, Milo stopped chewing. Aunt Rachel stared at her plate. I help where I can. Mother's face twisted into a pitying smile. That's the problem. You always think helping a little is enough. But what have you really done? Isabelle Father placed his fork down with a dull clink. We're not a charity. If you can't contribute like family, don't expect to be treated like family. I blinked. My fingers curled around the cloth napkin in my lap. He pointed toward the hallway. You can see yourself out. I sat still for a second longer, as if maybe this wasn't real. Maybe the turkey had poisoned me and this was some kind of hallucination. But no one argued. Not even Ethan. He avoided my gaze entirely. I stood up slowly, taking my purse. No one stopped me. My chair scraped against the hardwood like a scream no one wanted to acknowledge. I cooked that for you, Aunt Rachel whispered as I passed her. Her eyes were glassy, but her voice carried no protest. I didn't answer. The door clicked shut behind me. The rain had turned soft, drizzling onto the stone steps like the sky was trying to comfort me. I walked to the edge of the driveway where the porch light didn't quite reach. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I pulled it out. May investor pitch moved to Friday. You ready, CEO? Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's a loaded gun waiting for the right moment. The soft click of the kettle signaled it had finished boiling, the only sound in my apartment besides the quiet hum of the air purifier. I poured water over the loose leaves and watched steam spiral into the stillness. My space in Seattle was stripped down, clean lines, muted colors, nothing unnecessary. A row of whiteboards framed one wall covered in code fragments, growth charts scribbled notes and circled phrases like exit strategy and compliance firewall. Nothing about this place resembled Houston. And maybe that's why I'd survived. On the kitchen island, my laptop was already open to the investor pitch deck. Final touches had been made, numbers, bolded margins tightened. I tapped a key. A dashboard lit up revenue, up 280% year-over-year user base, tripled Series B pending. May walked in from the hallway holding 2 mugs. Your tea's too hot, your pitch is too perfect, and your silence last night was nuclear. She handed me one of the mugs and hopped onto a stool. So, you okay? I sat across from her. I didn't throw mashed potatoes at anyone. That's gotta count for something. Seriously, she said, voice softening. You sure you're not gonna combust? I mean, get out of my house at a family dinner. Your dad's got range. I sipped my tea eyes on the monitor. They did me a favor. Now there's no pressure to pretend I owe them explanations. May tilted her head. So, you're never gonna tell them I looked at her over the rim of my cup. Tell them that I own 35% of a company they wouldn't even understand. That I live below my means so no one figures out I'm not struggling for their approval. She leaned back and crossed her arms. Damn, that's cold. Calculated, I corrected. We worked in silence for a bit. The Zoom window blinked open, showing 2 muted investors on the East Coast. I nodded through the updates, let May do the talking when the tone needed charm, and walked them through the projected growth like I wasn't still shaking off last night's aftertaste. When the call ended, I shut the laptop and stood. On the far side of the room, one of the whiteboards displayed risk flags. Our internal AI watchlight had started scanning partner financials after we'd been burned once during beta. I walked over and tapped the touchscreen display. A list expanded. And there it was. Ethan H. Miller, credit score 517. Delinquent accounts. 3. Maxed credit lines. 5 risk tier high. He'd been flagged weeks ago, an old cross-reference from when he'd used my name to co-sign a loan. I'd never said a word about it. Never even asked him why. I'd just let it slide. My fingers hovered over the report. I opened the metadata, verified the dates. Then I whispered, "You're drowning in debt," and still pretending to swim. I copied the file and dropped it into a locked folder labeled Evidence, in case they come for me later. Feels good, doesn't it? May said behind me. I turned. What, knowing you've got the receipts, even if you never use them? I smiled, faint and fleeting. Insurance is underrated. I sat back at the desk and started scanning for other risk overlaps. But before I could open the next file, a message popped up in the corner of the screen. From Ethan's subject, just, "Thank you, body. Thanks for not saying anything. They came not because they loved me, but because the golden boy was melting." Ethan's apartment in New York had always been immaculate in an artificial way, like a showroom someone lived in just for appearances. Now the facade had slipped. Open boxes littered the floor, half packed, half forgotten. Envelopes marked final notice peeked out from under the mail pile on the counter. The once-framed degree from Wharton hung crooked on the wall, a corner of the glass cracked. His phone vibrated on the nightstand. Another voicemail. He didn't listen. Instead, he sat on the edge of the bed, tie-loosened eyes red, not from crying, but from the slow collapse of everything he'd built on borrowed time. He stared at the termination letter again. The HR sanitized language didn't soften the blow. Due to internal compliance issues, meant his lies had caught up. His leveraged reputation had finally tipped into freefall. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, my office overlooked the glittering skyline of Seattle. The city buzzed below 1,000 people chasing deadlines, but in here it was quiet. May was finishing up the beta presentation slides, earbuds in humming softly. I skimmed through the latest pre-IPO audit reports, methodically highlighting lines with potential red flags, not because I was worried, but because excellence was a habit I no longer compromised on. The phone buzzed. I let it ring. Then it rang again. And again. Finally, I answered. Isabelle. Mother's voice was thick, desperate. I didn't know who else to call. I didn't say anything. It's Ethan. She continued her tone, the perfect pitch between shame and performance. He lost his job. And the apartment, he might lose that too. There's so much debt. Your father and I were falling behind on everything utilities mortgage. Isabelle, honey, we need you. Still, I said nothing. I know we weren't fair. I know we said things we shouldn't have. But you're doing well now, right? I mean, we looked up your name, there are articles. People saying things about AI, a startup. I cut in softly. I'm just a useless daughter, remember? There was a pause. On her end, maybe the performance cracked. Maybe not. I didn't mean it, she whispered. It was just stress. You know your father. He didn't mean to kick you out. I heard him just fine, I replied. Please, we're your family. I looked out the window at the shimmering blur of red and gold lights. No, I said. You were a performance. I was a prop who forgot her line. Before she could answer, I hung up. May glanced over from her desk. You good? I nodded. Better than ever. I turned back to the computer, drafted a clean, impersonal email, attached the consulting services PDF, and clicked send. Subject: professional services inquiry. Fee structure: body. For strategic financial consultation, my hourly rate begins at $20,000. Family not included. No signature. No emotion. Just clarity. A few moments later, I opened a new message, attached our IPO teaser, one-pager, the bare minimum needed to rattle them, and hit forward. No words, just the document. Let them connect the dots. Let them realize what they threw out, who they called useless. An hour passed before my phone buzzed again. Ethan. You win. I stared at it for a moment, then typed slowly, deliberately. It was never a game. They tried to erase my name from everything, but Grandpa wrote it in ink they couldn't reach. The law office hadn't changed in 20 years. Same leather-bound volumes crowding the shelves. Same grandfather clock ticking softly in the corner. Same faint scent of polished oak and old paper. I remembered sitting here as a child, legs swinging off a stiff chair, tracing the grooves in the wooden armrests, while adults whispered behind heavy doors. This time I wasn't waiting outside. Mr. Harris stood as I entered, offering a hand that trembled slightly from age but still held warmth. Miss Isabelle, he said gently, motioning toward a high-backed chair across from his desk. Thank you for coming. I sat. You said this was about my grandfather. He nodded, sliding a cream-colored folder across the desk. I've been your family's counsel for over 4 decades. Your grandfather Walter entrusted me with several matters, but one in particular has lingered. I opened the folder slowly. Inside was a copy of a legal document bearing my name, dated 15 years ago. A trust fund, he explained. Originally established for your graduate education. $150,000. Still intact. It was meant to activate when you enrolled post-undergrad, but there was an issue. I glanced up. What kind of issue? He sighed. Notification rights. Your mother filed a revision removing your contact information from updates related to the trust. She couldn't legally erase you from the deed, but she did ensure you wouldn't know it existed unless you asked. I stared at the document again. My name, typed in clean serif font, had survived the quiet erasure. Mr. Harris opened a second folder. There's something else. A letter he left with the trust addressed to you. I unfolded it carefully, the paper yellowed at the edges. For Isabelle. Not because she needs it, but because I believe in her, even if no one else does. Love isn't always loud, but it should always be certain. My hands didn't tremble, but my throat tightened. I set the letter down gently and leaned back, eyes drifting to the antique clock. When I was 16, I said he gave me a blank notebook. Told me to fill it with things no one could take from me. I didn't understand then. Mr. Harris nodded solemnly. He understood more than he let on. I stood. I don't want the money. He blinked. You're sure? Yes, I said, but I do want it converted into a foundation. Aurora Foundation. Scholarships, mentorships, STEM access for girls like me. Like I was. He scribbled notes quickly. I'll draft the paperwork. As I walked out into the humid Houston afternoon, I pulled out my phone. Mother answered after the third ring. Isabelle, I met with Mr. Harris, I said calmly. About the trust. A pause. I was going to tell you, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. You couldn't erase me, I said. He wouldn't let you. Silence hung between us like fog. I ended the call without waiting for a reply. Later that evening, in a sleek boardroom atop our Seattle office, I finalized the press list for next week's launch. May sat beside me adjusting invite links, tightening access codes. The final invitation, exclusive non-transferable, was sent at 8:06 p.m. Subject Aurelia AI Inc. Founders press briefing, private guest access recipients. Ethan Miller, Charlotte Miller, status delivered. Opened. No reply. If silence was power, this was my thunder. The ballroom shimmered with calculated opulence, crystal chandeliers casting warm halos onto sleek suits and sequined dresses. The branding was subtle matte black banners with a single gold A barely hinting at the quiet storm to come. Investors murmured in small circles. Reporters held poised notepads and blinking recorders. Everyone expected innovation. No one expected revelation. I stood behind the curtain listening to the soft hum of anticipation. My heels were grounded. My heart wasn't racing. Not anymore. May took the stage first. No dramatic entrance. No inflated adjectives. Just presence. Aurelia AI began with one question, she said, her voice crisp clear. What if financial systems could see people as more than numbers? In less than 2 years, we've grown 400%. Our flagship Aurora is a proprietary AI tool redefining ethical credit analysis. She paused, then turned slightly. Today, the person who led us here will explain why it mattered. I stepped onto the stage, the lights soft but unyielding. The room fell quiet, not out of recognition, but curiosity. My name is Isabelle, I began. When I was 15, a teacher said I was too quiet to lead. When I was 25, a manager said I was too polite to be taken seriously. When I was 30, my family said I was useless. A ripple of unease moved through the room. I never corrected them. I just kept building. I gestured toward the screen. Aurora was built to identify unseen patterns, bias, exclusion potential. Let me show you. The demo launched. On-screen charts bloomed with color and movement. We ran anonymized data models through Aurora's engine. One profile showed escalating credit card balances, frequent payday loans, high luxury spending despite declining income. Aurora flagged it as high risk due to appearance maintenance. I didn't say his name. I didn't have to. In the back row, I saw Mother's fingers tense against the velvet clutch in her lap. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, gaze locked to the floor. I continued. Aurora doesn't ask who you impress. It asks who you are when no one is watching. The presentation wrapped with a simple slide, a single sentence. Trust isn't what you give, it's what you prove. I stepped back, thanked the audience, and exited stage left, walking into a quiet that rang louder than applause. Outside, near the reception hall, I caught a flash of blonde hair. Mother. Her eyes were glassy, lips parted. She reached forward. Isabelle, please. I didn't flinch. I didn't stop. There is no seat at my table for people who only see value in price tags. And I kept walking. Behind me, May approached Ethan. She didn't speak, didn't pause. She handed him a flash drive, silver small. He took it without question. The label on the file inside read, "Know who she is now." Back inside, a young journalist caught up to me before I reached the elevator. Ms. Miller, she said breathlessly. One last question, I nodded. What does Aurelia mean to you? I smiled soft and unshaken, a name I gave myself when mine was forgotten. You don't need revenge when your peace is louder than their memory of you. The sun spilled over the small community center in Houston, warming the edges of a modest brick building that now bore a gold-plated plaque, Aurora Foundation, in memory of Walter C. Miller. Children laughed in the background, tugging at balloon strings, oblivious to the quiet gravity of the morning. There were folding chairs, hand-lettered signs, and a small podium set against a mural painted by local teens, light beams rising from cracked concrete. I stood at the microphone, the spring breeze tugging at the hem of my blouse. Behind me, May adjusted the press passes, her calm efficiency grounding me. In the front row sat a young girl, no older than 10 legs, swinging beneath her chair, eyes locked on me like I was something more than a woman in heels. This foundation, I said, isn't about where you came from. It's about what you choose to build when no one expects anything of you. There was no thunderous applause, just warm, quiet appreciation, the kind that wraps around your shoulders instead of ringing in your ears. After the ceremony, the girl approached, clutching the scholarship certificate like a treasure map. "Miss Isabelle," she said, "I want to build something too." I knelt so we were eye to eye. "Then build it so strong," I whispered, "they can't look away." Her smile reminded me of something distant, someone I used to be. That evening, I sat by my window, the notebook Grandpa gave me open on my lap. The pages were nearly full now. Sketches of early algorithms, quotes from engineers I admired, half-scribbled frustrations from sleepless nights. But this final page, it needed something different. I stared out at the city, golden in the fading light, then pressed my pen to the paper. They called me useless. I turned it into a foundation. My chest didn't swell with triumph, just peace. Like a long-held breath finally released. Somewhere in the distance, I imagined Grandpa's chuckle. "Now you're blooming, my Amandus." I closed the notebook, its spine worn and faithful, and tucked it into the shelf between books that had shaped me. On my walk home from the foundation office the next day, a man paused at a street corner beside me. Late 30s, friendly eyes, holding a coffee to go with a dog tugging gently at the leash. "Sorry," he said after a few hesitant glances. "You're the woman who built the AI that judges fairly, right?" I turned to face him, the breeze catching strands of my hair. "No," I said, not with dismissal, but clarity. "I'm the woman who rebuilt herself fairly." He smiled. "Even better." And we waited side by side for the light to change. In the end, they didn't lose her to bitterness, they lost her to clarity. What they tried to bury in silence rose louder than any name they once erased. Justice didn't arrive with fury, but with precision, dressed in the calm of someone who no longer needed to explain. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Some battles are won not by striking back, but by becoming untouchable.